We're back with the teachings of the Ascended Masters on fallen angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. This is now episode 8, and I'm Joseph Macchio.
And I'm Stephen Macchio. And I believe at the end of episode 7, we were talking about that so far now, the fourth root race who is on the planet, tens of millions of years have gone by.
Yes.
And the infiltration is getting very thick. And we were talking about the cosmic hierarchy, watching these things play out, and what is it that they're going to do about it, if anything, and what do they do about it. So that's where we're going to go now, where the cosmic hierarchy is watching the evolutions on Earth spiraling downward and downward and downward. And they're having a lot of issues. They cannot get out of the mire they're in, that they actually put themselves in. But, you know, you could see both sides of this.
Yes, you can.
They got into it, but you can't, you know, things happen. The cosmic hierarchy is watching. And this goes all the way up to cosmic councils trying to decide what to do with planet Earth.
Now, the decision, of course, rested on the fact that at this particular time in cosmic history, all of the evolutions that were present on planet Earth lost the divine spark completely. There wasn't one soul in this particular period, which is now millions of years ago, that had a divine spark. All lost. In addition to that, because of the loss of the divine spark, the humanity of this race and this planet at this time went down to what you would call the level of the ape man or caveman.
So really, we're talking about a de-evolution, a devolution.
Yes.
Instead of the people that, and the souls of light that are assigned to this planet to raise themselves up and get out of the mire they're in, they don't, and they start spiraling downward.
Yes.
Now you could see where this is going.
Yes, we can.
If you now have the population of a planet and everyone on it at the level of what's known as the caveman, or worse, if you came along later and picked up where they devolved to,
yes,
you can see where you can get very confused as to whether that is the very bottom of evolution or the beginning of evolution.
Right.
And this is, we're not going to get into that too intensely right now, but let's say what happens.
What most people interpret it as.
Right.
You know,
they're
you start
thinking that this is the
as
start.
an ape man and you go up, where in fact, that was where they descended.
So we're at the level of a caveman or worse.
We are.
And the planet also is heavily populated. I don't want the people to think that, well, there might only be a few thousand people running around in Lemuria. There's billions of people inhabiting the planet.
Yes, yes.
You know, I'm not saying it was around the 8 or so, 9 billion we have now.
We never were given that figure at all.
But it's heavily populated. It's not just a few 100,000 people living in some city in Lemuria. This is planetary wide.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take it from there. So they're at the level of caveman or worse.
Yes.
And cosmic councils, and they all have lost their divine spark.
Right. And you might say, well, you mean to say that before this happened, that the cosmic council and the great divine beings didn't interfere?
Yeah, why would they let it get to that
Why
point?
would they let it get? Well, that's a very good question. We understand, we've been told that there is such thing as the law of octaves.
Okay, all right.
Well, a man has free will, and the cosmic hierarchy respects that free will. If the evolutions of Earth en masse, tremendous amount of people, probably millions, asked for divine aid and intercession, it would have been forthcoming. But because of the law of octaves and the idea that, as Genesis states, you know, you have dominion over the earth. We are giving you, God, the cosmic hierarchy has given you dominion over the earth, and therefore, by your free will, you make Earth what you want to make, as the previous root races made their Earth a Garden of Eden, so to speak.
Otherwise, they'd be interfering with your free will.
They'd be
If they just
interfering with
came
your
in
free will,
and did it
and
anyway.
they would cause you, or they'd make you, but you wouldn't learn anything. They would make you do something. They would make you, and then you would say, well, they forced me to be good. They forced me, when in fact it has to be by free will. And
you do have the ability to raise yourself up.
You do have
But
the ability.
once you get to the point where now the divine spark
Yes.
has gone out,
Right.
your contact, the soul's ability
Yes.
to contact the higher sources that you originally had
Yes.
are no longer available to you.
No.
So you're in a bad way.
You're in a
the
bad way.
evolutions are in a very bad way. So what happens?
Well, what happens at this point is that the Cosmic Council has a big meeting responsible for the Earth, and they decide that since there is not one soul with a threefold flame, and the purpose of any planet is to be a platform of evolution, where these races go higher and higher in cosmic consciousness and become basically gods themselves, masters and gods. So they decided that, well, there is no reason for Earth to exist at this point. We may have to have the planet be destroyed, be ended, and start all over again with these evolutions, if they can even be started all over again, because otherwise everyone would be annihilated because there's no flame. There's nothing to be kept. There's nothing to be.
Yeah, this is part of a cosmic law.
Yes.
Which is impersonal. So when you have this condition, cosmic law says that you now have to have cosmic councils look at the situation and see whether or not it can be remedied.
Yes.
But I believe that we were told by the Ascended Masters, and this is part of the new revelation that we've been talking about, is that part of that cosmic law required someone of extremely high attainment to possibly intervene for the planet. Now, who was that individual who would do such a thing for a planet that is devoid of its divine spark?
Enter beloved Sanatkumara.
One of the 7 Kumaras.
One of the 7 Kumaras, Sanat Kumara, Kumara. This is Sanskrit for always a youth or eternal youth. Who was Sanatkumara? He was the hierarch of the planet Venus. And the planet Venus is on the 3rd ray of divine love. And this was a very advanced in evolution planet, far more advanced than Earth. And the Cosmic Council met, and Sanatkumara said, do not destroy planet Earth. I will go down to planet Earth. I will save the evolutions. I will go down myself, hold the balance, and attempt to save this whole planet and all its evolutions and bring them back where they were.
And this is part of that requirement of cosmic law. Now, he didn't have to do this.
No.
This is a free will choice by an extremely advanced cosmic being.
Yes.
And by saving the planet, I just wanted to reiterate it, means that this great being, Sanatkumara, uses the light from his own divine spark, and by a very, very thin filigree thread, almost as thin or thinner than a spider's web, he connects the flame, the fire, the light of his heart to every living soul, if you want to call them a living soul, because at that point they're not really alive in the sense that once you don't have the divine spark, you could be alive in the sense that you're still functioning. You have a heartbeat, you're walking around,
yes, you are.
You're breathing, everything else like that is still happening, functioning. But you have no light. You cannot move in any direction but down. So this great being now connects the light from his divine spark to all of the evolutions that are on this planet.
Now, you might ask, did he come alone? Well, on Venus, Sanatkumara was a great guru. He's a great bodhisattva. So he had hundreds of thousands of disciples that were under him, that loved him. And so it so happened that there was a mandala or a group of souls on Venus called 144,000. And we find this number mentioned in the book of Revelation. This group of people surrounded Sanatkumara and said, "We will come with you. We will take on incarnation. We will take on bodies as soon as those bodies were to a certain degree improved." Because remember, they were like cavemen or ape men. So the 144,000 volunteered to come to Earth with Sanatkumara, and 400 came ahead of time. And these 400 souls from Venus actually built a retreat and a city for Sanatkumara called Shambhala. And most people are familiar with that term, especially from the East. This was his retreat, and it was, I understand, physically built by these 400, which took several centuries because they came under opposition to the type of individuals that were on the planet, the type of people.
And these beings that came with Sanatkumara are very advanced. They have tremendous attainment.
Yes, they do.
And this is the counter to what has been going on this planet.
Yes.
Because finally something is being done, and there could have been, who knows what else could have happened here. So you have very advanced souls embodying in bodies that they're not used to at all. They have very light spiritual bodies, and I'm just saying this to understand the sacrifice that these beings made to now go into an extremely dense form as a caveman. Think of the freedom you have in the etheric octaves and above on Venus, and then coming down to a caveman type of evolution, and you're stuck in this running around with caves.
Well,
right. But it all wasn't that bad. I mean, I think you're only getting a cross section of really what was going on from the theories of evolution and the Darwinian theories of evolution. I don't think everyone was, having to live in caves.
No, not necessarily. Well, because of the coming of Sanatkumara, and some of these 144,000 decided to wait on the etheric levels or planes until the bodies improved somewhat. The bodies that were supposed to be the bodies of the cavemen, that they improved, and therefore it was, quote, safe for the 144,000 and others. Now, some of the angelic hosts that did not fall with Lucifer also decided, we want to go to Earth too and become teachers. We want to help Sanatkumara raise the consciousness of the planet Earth. So then, on top of the 144,000, we have volunteers from the angelic hosts, volunteers from various planets of the light. Now, they didn't get into a spaceship to come here. They came through reincarnation. They came down here as servants, as teachers, and a lot of people, and many of these people are still here today. This is millions of years ago, but they have still reincarnated because the mission isn't fully over. It isn't complete. We have not had the full victory, but yet there has been a tremendous amount of victory on Earth. Because if you look at Earth today and look at the way we look, we're not bent over and we're not ape men.
Thank God.
This is specifically due to the coming of Sanatkumara, who, after, let's say, centuries, actually improved the race, whereby they now appeared to be in that archetypal form that you were talking about.
And you had the Lords of Form and other beings trying to help to improve that race, as they did way before in the beginning of our story, when the archangels working under the Elohim would come and improve the race. So they did that again.
Yes.
And I mean, you can just see the scene. Millions of angels volunteering from all over the various systems of worlds, Milky Way galaxy, from Andromeda, all gathering. The word now has spread, and it's spreading like wildfire in the heaven world, in the etheric planes, that a Kumara has come forward. We're moving on with our mission. We are not going to stand for this evolution to just waste away. into nothingness and devolve. We're going to improve the race. We're going
Yes.
to incarnate among those people. I mean, this is a huge thing that's happening here.
It's tremendous. The raising of consciousness is what we're talking about, as well as the raising of the form of the physical body.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that about the 144,000, because I think in some circles, people think that only 144,000 people could ultimately be saved. Sometimes there's a misinterpretation of that
Right,
number.
yes,
all
there's been a
kinds of-
misinterpretation of
You know,
that.
so
yeah.
all we're saying, to reiterate, is that was the original group, but then they're joined by millions
Yes,
of angels of all different bands embodying.
yes. So angels take flesh. They have the ability, if they want to volunteer, come into earth, and they're embodied angels. And many of the great, great masters that we know of today were actually from the angelic bands, or from other more evolved planets that came here. And many of these became the great avatars that saved Earth, that taught the teachings. And this was all because of Sanatkumara's coming. And he had his own disciples, and Gautama Buddha, now known as Gautama Buddha, being one of them, Lord Maitreya also being another one that came with Sanatkumara.
Right. And I think we'll just mention quickly before we move on here that, if you were to Google Shambhala, Sanatkumara, you'll come up with things also from the Vedic literature regarding the focus of Shambhala being over the White Island. It's a white island
Yes,
in the middle of the Gobi Sea, where the Gobi Desert now is. We'll talk about that perhaps later, but at this stage of the game, the Gobi Desert is a magnificent sea,
yes,
and in the middle of that sea is the island, the White Island, known as Shambhala, and that is where Sanatkumara and his entourage and then the others start embodying,
yes,
not just on that island, but they start spreading out to the rest of the planet.
right. And these evolutions, 144,000, those who had a greater amount of light attainment were generally called, quote, light bearers. They were not a root race, but they had a greater attainment. They had more light. They had more divine consciousness. And they themselves did not necessarily fully understand.
What they were getting into.
Yes,
I mean, you could say light bearer, you could say light bringer.
light bringer.
So what we're trying to say is that when you have someone with tremendous attainment, and that the bodies of these beings incarnating into a lower evolution, and the race that we described,
Yes,
that the very power of those beings being in those bodies is a raising action in and of itself, starting at the
Yes.
molecular structure at the atomic level.
yes,
And so this is how the raising happens.
that's a good point.
And so it's fascinating, when you really delve into the history of Earth and the sacrifice of these cosmic beings and angels
Yes.
that came here. All right, so let's continue with our story now. We're continuing after the coming of Sanatkumara. So things are spreading out. The race is being improved. Things are looking up. There's hope for planet Earth
Right.
and its evolutions.
But the fallen ones aren't just sitting around.
No, why
doing
would they
nothing.
take that? They're not
Why
going
would
to. They know it's
Why-
happening.
Of course.
Right? They can't stop it.
Right.
But
Right.
now they're even probably more enraged.
They are more enraged, and they try to seduce the light bearers of the earth that came with Sanatkumara to their way, to their life, and they start implanting what we might call seeds of pride, of rebellion. And so this is a volunteer thing. I mean, the light bearers volunteered to do this, and the fallen ones now try to take advantage, and they're successful to a very large extent. In other instances, they are not successful. So centuries and maybe thousands of years passed. The civilization on Lemuria begins to improve, but yet the fallen ones are still there And there are certain individuals that succumb. These are of the light now.
Right.
These are the light bearers.
Right.
They start succumbing. They start succumbing to the machinations of the fallen ones and their civilization, their distorted rhythms.
I think drugs were
Their
used.
drugs. They use drugs to bring the energy down, to siphon it off. We've been talking about that before.
Basically, there's
About the
nothing new
siphoning
under
off.
the sun.
There's nothing new. And if you look at the history of the planet, let's say, more noticeably from the 1960s on, you will see that they're using the same circus act that they used on Lemuria and on Atlantis.
Yeah, and I just want to interject here because you were talking about that they started to succumb to this. Now, they knew that that would probably happen. I mean, these cosmic beings know that when you go down to the level of the evolutions that were on this planet, to
Yes.
that level,
Yeah.
that you are going to get stuck. And they knew that tens of thousands of years would go by where they may be stuck in a very compromised situation. So it's not like they were stupid and thought, well,
Yeah.
let's just go down there and in a few
Right.
thousand years, we'll break through and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that again to understand the incredible awareness they had and the sacrifice, knowing that they would be caught here for tens of thousands of years. But eventually, you see, they know that ultimately the light within the body will raise the consciousness. And then you get to the point where you were talking about where there was finally improvement.
There was finally improvement. But you see, this is called the power of love. The love of Sanatkumara, who's a bodhisattva.
Meaning bodhisattva, just
Bodhisattva is a person who lives and breathes for the saving of all sentient beings throughout the universe.
until they
Now,
can.
Bodhi is wisdom, Sattva is being, a being of wisdom that has the desire to save all sentient life. No matter how bad that life became, the Bodhisattva says, well, there's some seed. There's some seed of light that can sprout within these evolutions of darkness, let's say. We're going to hold the balance. We're going to use love. And the planet Venus is the planet of love. We understand that. And these angels, these 144,000 had so much love that it counteracted the fear. Oh, maybe we shouldn't go down there. Maybe we shouldn't help. You see, the love was greater.
And they also know that ultimately the light does win over.
Yes. When all the cycles are through,
Right.
and this now may take millions of years, some people say, well, I don't see any victories. Well, we have to look at the long picture. We have to look at the big picture.
Right.
Okay? Ultimately, there is nothing of evil that can eventually be sustained, whether you're talking about a solar system, a planet,
Right.
or a person.
Or an individual, right.
At the end of a certain cycle, you're through, and you have to be repolarized or annihilated, and we're not going to deal with this now. Because there's nothing left of light, you see, and it goes back to the source of light, the great central sun. But that's another story.
Right. So we're at the point now where Lemuria is better, that the evolutions are coming up, and then let's take it from there.
Okay.
That
Well, even though it's better, as we just said, the fallen ones still have a hold
sure.
on people. So enter those famous, the famous couple known as Adam and Eve, whether or not that was the original term. Adam and Eve looked down and saw the situation of Earth. Now we're looking at tens of thousands or more of years after Sanatkumara, maybe a million years later, on the continent of Lemuria, which was still standing, although it broke up in many places due to the karmic effect. They decide that we are going to come down and start a mystery school or be part of a mystery school. A mystery school. Can you explain what a mystery school actually is?
Because there's enough people now on the planet that could come together. They're starting to understand that, and they're starting to be able to see through relative good and evil and absolute good and absolute evil. And they're wise to the machinations of the fallen ones. Some of them are still caught in it, but they know that there's two sides of the equation. There's a side of light fighting against the side of darkness. So a mystery school basically is when you get enough souls together that warrant the ability for teachers, gurus, if you want to call them that, to come into incarnation, because there's enough souls that would be attracted to that light, to the light of the gurus and their teaching and what they're going to give in that particular dispensation.
Yes.
And it's a certain group of people that would naturally be attracted to this, and they know that. So I could see now Adam and Eve, when you were saying looking down, they're on the higher etheric planes, and there's all kinds of activity in the etheric world.
Yes.
People making decisions at all different levels, saying, we have enough now. What if we go into incarnation and get a very large group of souls together and form a community and form a school where we can reintroduce once again, the teachings of the Ascended Masters, the teachings of the Kumaras, the teachings of the angelic host, and there's specific teachings that, key a soul into reality. And so they're going to decide to come down, as you were saying, embody, knowing all the risks, knowing that the evil forces are still in full force. They're not giving up.
No.
And so perhaps now we will get into this epic of the Garden of Eden and what happens there, because it's very misunderstood, in our next episode.
Yes.
Because I think we should conclude here. In the next episode, we will begin with the Garden of Eden, what happens there, and why. Thank you for watching us.
Thank you.